Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask a question which I'm going to flip in for you guys. He wants me to basically talk about cooking oils and health, what the options are there, what the consensus is, what's going on with healthy fats and all of that with cooking oils. Is it good, bad? What are the other options if it's bad? So let's jump into that a little bit. All right, let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on my crafting a little bit, and yeah, let's talk about it. All right, cliff notes for people who hate the longer videos. Honestly, you probably shouldn't be cooking with oil. You shouldn't be cooking with added fat in general. Butter, cooking oils, most of them have problems when you cook with them. Not the ideal thing to do. It's one thing to already consume high-fat foods. It's another thing to actually just go out of your way to add fats, and you need to realize that a lot of oils are destroyed, and a lot of their nutritional value and benefits they might have had get destroyed as soon as heat's applied. Bad idea. If you're going to use any oils, extra virgin olive oil is probably your best choice. And I still wouldn't get it too hot. I wouldn't cook with it. You know what? You have baking, grilling, all sorts of other options there available. You don't have to cook foods in oils. Irrespective of what your culture is or what your traditions are, doesn't matter. You can still cook ways that are outside of whatever the traditions of your culture are. You have options there. Anything hot will cook food. Oil isn't required. All right, for those who want a little more detail, the problem we get into here is that in general, high-fat diets are not good for you unless you're doing some sort of ketogenic diet. Now, a bunch of people are going to jump in who hate on high-fat diets and argue that point. Guys, people on ketogenic diets seem to have good health if they adhere to the diet. I don't think it's fair to discredit that because all the data shows that people who follow these diets are generally okay. They don't seem to suffer health consequences from them. They're generally okay, but the problem is that when you start mixing large amounts of fat with large amounts of carbs, particularly large amounts of refined carbs, you have a problem. You don't want to add tons of fat to your diet. People get hung up in this idea of healthy fats without actually thinking about what that means. Is there really such a thing? Yeah, there are essential fats. There's omega-3 and omega-6 that you need to survive. Most people have no trouble getting enough omega-6. Anything beyond what you need for your basic health of most of these omega-3s isn't really beneficial beyond a certain threshold. They just become fat calories after that. The other thing is you need enough fat in your diet to get your fat-soluble vitamins in. Again, doesn't require large amounts of fat to do that. Certainly doesn't require you to cook with oils to do so. Furthermore, a lot of these things become carcinogenic and even inflammatory as they're exposed to heat. The problem we run into is that different cooking oils are different sorts of substances, meaning there's different types of fats involved. Cooking oil is not a generic thing. Not all vegetable oils and cooking oils have the same type of fats in them. A few of them are very high in omega-3s, like flaxseed oil. But you know what? If you get it hot, you break down the omega-3s, and ALA is not really that great of a fatty acid, but you know what? You can get tons of it from vegetables anyways. People who eat a ton of vegetables probably get plenty of ALA anyways. Not really good to cook with. A lot of others are really high in omega-6. Canola oil, perfect example. Most vegetable oils very high in omega-6. It's the highest concentrated fat in there. Your problem. Most people have no trouble getting enough omega-6, even though it's essential, and beyond a certain threshold, it's not that great for you. If you're adding it in the form of cooking oils, you're probably getting an excessive amount. Furthermore, it is degraded with heat. The nutritional benefits of it, even a lot of the antioxidants and other things in these foods, tend to be broken down with processing and heat. So if it's not extra virgin, it's already been partially damaged usually, and then applying heat to it, canola oil or any of these other vegetable oils like that type, can become a problem, and they can become inflammatory in large amounts. They tend to become empty fat calories. Empty fat calories is not the best thing for either training performance, nor is it the best thing for your body composition or overall health. In fact, it's fair enough to say that omega-6 fats are possibly more inflammatory, particularly when they've been processed and cooked with, than even saturated fat. It's probably worse for you to use a vegetable oil than it is to use butter if you just want to add fat to something. But the same thing there, butter, very large amounts of saturated fat is not ideal either. It's probably fine if you're in a ketogenic diet, but people who aren't doing ketogenic diets, large amounts of saturated fat can negatively affect your lipid profile. You need to moderate these things. So that means throwing even butter and stuff into everything you eat, probably not the best choice if health is your overall concern. The people who tend to do really well and live the longest as a demographic, are generally the people who eat fairly low-fat diets. So throwing a bunch of damaged omega-6 fats that you're cooking with on top of your food, not the best choice. All right, so coconut oil, another big one that everyone talks about. Here's our problem. Yes, coconut oil is largely, it's a lot of MCT oil in it, which is medium chain triglycerides, and there's a lot of saturated fat in it. Now, people will argue that it's a different type of saturated fat. It's not the stearic acid you usually find in, say, beef products, like milk, beef, everything else that is the primary form of saturated fat there. It seems to be more benign, the saturated fat found in coconuts. And I believe it's called, is it laurelic acid? I can't remember the exact one, but it starts with an L, and that's the type of saturated fat found in there. The problem is that it seems to be somewhat benign, but not necessarily beneficial. The effects of medium chain triglycerides in there have been largely overrated. People talk about the ketogenic benefits and everything else. They found that MCT-based ketogenic diets, for example, though, with children with epilepsy, most of the experts who've looked at it, who I've seen their work, state that they don't do as well as they do on other ketogenic diets that don't contain medium chain triglycerides. So they're not really as ketogenic as they're being made out to be on paper when it comes to actual medical benefits for people who benefit from ketones. So coconut oil, really kind of a hit or miss thing. It's subject to debate. A lot of the companies involved in it, the coconut growers and coconut oil associations, they want to talk about research. They have the limited research, say, hey, here's all the health benefits. The problem, we don't have enough data on coconut oil at this time to really say whether it's healthy or not. There's some data which could suggest it might have some health benefits. There's other data which suggests that, no, not really, that it might just at the end of the day be empty fat calories like a lot of other oils. So this whole idea that it's a healthy fat has been hyped up without enough real evidence to make any sort of conclusions on it. So again, people who are like, well, coconut oil, I could cook with that. Well, maybe if you enjoy it, but you need to understand at the end of the day, it is just fat calories. And for people who are trying to train hard, it's probably not as good as just consuming carbohydrates. So people go and take something like potatoes and cook it in coconut oil, and they're like, well, I get some all these medium chain triglycerides and these other healthy fats. And it's like, yeah, but for your training, your glycogen stores, everything else, you could have just eaten more potatoes for the same calories and gotten more benefit. So at a certain point, it starts to really seem kind of pointless, even for health, athletic performance, everything else. A lot of these so-called healthy oils that people try to consume, again, they seem to be really, really overrated. And coconut oil falls into that gray area to where we don't have enough research to really say whether it's healthy or not for you as a food option, in particular to be consuming large amounts of it. And when the data is questionable, probably not a good idea, because consuming large amounts of any fat doesn't seem to be a particularly good idea for health. Again, for people not doing ketogenic diets. And I want to state that point again because I'm going to get slammed on that by advocates of keto diets. We're not talking about people on ketogenic diets. We're talking about people on more balanced diets. And the vegans need to understand that when they come in, and they'll jump into and say, oh, these ketogenic diets are the worst things because of all these saturated fats. But it's like people who follow them don't seem to have problems. You have to separate people who are on more conventional style diets, who are throwing in lots of extra fats in their diet, versus people who are consuming almost all fat diets. It doesn't seem to be the same thing, and you have to understand that. The blood work kind of shows that. People tend to be okay who do the ketogenic diets. They're not the heart-destroying, health-destroying diets that they've been made out to be, or they don't appear to be at this point from all the available research. And that's something that I had to accept a couple years ago myself and come to terms with, because I used to hold that stance, and then I looked at the data and said, they just don't really seem to be that bad. So what are we left with out of this stuff? Basically extra virgin olive oil. If you want to eat an oil, if you want to add some additional fat to your diet, extra virgin olive oil seems to be your best choice. It is one of the few fats that seems to actually be healthy, to actually improve your lipid profiles a little bit, actually be helpful with your overall cholesterol to consume. But just like anything else, in excess, it doesn't seem to have benefits. So if you're sitting around drinking spoons and spoons of extra virgin olive oil every day, you may not be doing yourselves any favor, because at the end of the day, the health benefits taper off very quickly. It seems to be one of those fats that maybe for people who are on a fairly low-fat diet, adding a little olive oil can benefit their health sometimes. It can help with their satiety sometimes if they just need a little bit of fat to be more filling. But like anything else, just consuming it in excess, it is easy to just get excessive surplus fat calories in, which again, isn't ideal for anyone's health. Not the best of choices, because ultimately that's going to put extra body fat on you, because it's easy to overeat when you do that. And when you start overeating and you're taking in extra fat calories, you're going to tend to gain body fat. And you're gaining body fat without any real benefit at that point. Also, one of those fats that does seem to be fairly benign. It seems to have almost minimal negative health effects outside of just the potential for weight gain or body fat gain from consuming it. It doesn't really seem to hurt you to consume large amounts as long as you're not in a large calorie surplus as a result of it. It's a very benign fat and has some health benefits. But like all other things, that's the extra virgin olive oil. It means it hasn't gone through a heat process. Once you start cooking with it, once you start subjecting it to temperatures that are hot enough to, say, cook meat, or to cook your raw potato all the way through to make it a baked potato, once you start subjecting it to those type of heats, you start breaking down some of the benefits of it. All the little polyphenols and things in there that seem to be useful to it, they start to degrade as temperature goes up. So any reason you would be consuming it for health benefits, you are damaging those health benefits once you cook it. So people say, what are my options? I mean, if I can't cook with all these oils, what am I supposed to do? Cook with fire. Cook like everyone else does. People have been cooking for hundreds of thousands of years without needing oils to do so. You can cook some foods directly over an open flame. You could fry foods in a pan without any oil in it. Just get a non-stick pan or stir it more often. How about a George Foreman grill? How about baking your food in the oven? You know, you could put your food in glassware or enamel pans or anything else and cook them directly in the oven without needing any oils on them. And it's one thing to say, okay, I need a little bit of no-stick stuff. Let's say you don't want to use Teflon. Maybe you're concerned that Teflon pans might put a bunch of xenoestrogens or whatever into your body, whatever it is that you're concerned with. Okay, fine. So you don't want to use a Teflon pan and you need a non-stick surface. Well, if you want to put just a little bit of olive oil or just a little bit of butter or something onto a pan in order to make your food not stick when you cook it, that's fine. But that's not the same thing as coating your food in it or putting a layer of it in the bottom that it's cooking in. That's totally different. It takes very small amounts of these things to create a non-stick surface. So that, and remember, just stir your food more often. You know, don't let it stick to the pan and burn. Whatever it is you happen to be cooking, and these problems kind of go away. But it always surprises me when people say, oh, I mean, how am I supposed to cook my food without oils? Because I don't have any oils in my house. I don't have any trouble cooking food. Look at my body weight. I get plenty of food in, and I cook my food every day. I have a Foreman grill, I have an oven, and I have a stove, and I have an assortment of pots and pans and containers to cook my food in. You just apply heat to your food, and it actually will cook without oil. It just takes heat. You have to find a way to apply that heat. And I also have a rice cooker. Rice cookers are awesome also. It's just not that hard to cook without oil. And I'm not sure what cultures these people are coming from who are saying this, because I've just never heard of until I got on YouTube and discussed this of anyone saying that they don't know how to cook without oil. I've just, again, it must be a cultural difference or a different country or something, and so maybe I'm not understanding how they do things where they live, but I've just never heard of this before, it being a problem. So I guess that's the advice that I have as far as what you should do to cook without oils if you don't want to cook with them, which I generally recommend that you not do so. There's no reason to, and it's not particularly healthy. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.